But then we realised the way the question is designed is actually aiming for a certain segment of people from society.
Can you give an example?
I can't out of the top of my head. But,
Yeah.
It's just the way it was questioned and the way it was ranked. So it actually discriminates certain people the way they talk or the question it arises.
Yeah.
But nothing is 100% perfect. Yeah. I suppose I've got some more question with regards to gender, because it seems to be, if we create equality, especially about the gender side, it seems to be really rooted in culture. So within Southeast Asia, it's more about the dominant male and female. How do you change that? I mean, even Europe, they've got this problem. So like the Prime Minister of Germany, she refuses about a status quo because there's a study done from Norwegian University that show if you put as a status quo, actually had negative impact because you just want to meet the stats rather than getting the right kind of people within the organisation and board. Yeah. In that effect, what are the three objectives to make those culture change? So who are the key stakeholders? If we're talking about creating more nursery or education, I was brought in Scandinavia, Denmark, perfect. They provide perfect nursery education support to the family because the social impact if you want both families to work. But the tax is very high. And if we look at Southeast Asia, there's no tax. Because that would actually have an impact on the company competitiveness within the global markets. So,
Okay.
So what's the solution?
I'm doing the tax. Yeah. Sure, a very short answer on the tax and childcare. So I think it's quite easy to show that if you have like incentives to increase, or if you use the tax system to make it more tax efficient, to basically give tax breaks for working parents, then and that leads to an increase in participation in the labour market, the government can get that money back in revenues because your economy grows more. So you're right that there's a limit overall to how many public services you can provide. That needs to be funded somehow. But generally, targeted measures to increase provision of childcare helps to increase participation, and that pays for itself through this sort of dynamic impact on the economy and on what that does for government revenue. So.
I'm going to ask just very briefly.
Sorry, we're almost out of time, so maybe you can save your questions for later.
I think he's commenting.
It was just very quickly, okay, when it comes to climate change denial, I've heard this phrase climate chauvinism, and to what extent do you think climate change denial and the energy industry do represent a kind of chauvinistic agenda?
Ooh. I like bringing the two together. I haven't heard that term, but yeah.
Would you mind repeating it to make sure I fully understand? Because I saw you move when he was, phrasing his question. So I thought that you were commenting on that. So if we could address
can discuss it later.
Yeah. Sure. Okay. I will just make one point because we are out of time, as PJ reminds us. And that one point is that I think our comments are predicated on the women being qualified for those roles and certain impediments along the way that stop their work or their abilities from being recognized, right? So quotas, well, I mean, I'll be interested in knowing which countries and sectors you are referring to, and I think you can direct questions to Iris. But basically, it's about recognizing women who have the abilities to perform well. It's not about putting in place people who are not qualified, because you know what? That would set back the battle for all of us. Yeah. So I would say it doesn't make sense.
But how do you change that?
You just have a very good screening process to ensure that only exceptional candidates get in. The test is in the yeah. Internet Morgan Stanley, by the way, so I was curious about that.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for the interesting discussion. There's a lot of promise for future discussion, some really interesting ideas. But unfortunately, we're out of time, so let's thank our two panelists. And we're going to finish with just a short word from our forum rapporteur, Phyllis Ferguson, who is going to just try and draw together a few themes out of the past few days and a few conclusions. So, Phyllis, please.
We've all been working very hard, and I think it's going to take some time for me to pull everything together, to give you a draft paper on where we've been and where we're going. We've had panels on women in finance, women in entrepreneurship, women in leadership. We have also tried to look specifically at issues concerning leadership at all different kinds of levels, at the international level, at the national level, and at the community level and at home. And I think that we have come to a determination that, particularly in areas concerning maternal health and family planning, at the community level, women need to step up. We also have looked particularly at women in politics and in the way in which women in politics join with local partners to increase their own education, their own knowledge, and their own capacities and capabilities. It was pretty clear that the legal process within any state has a very strong impact on the extent to which women's participation is either encouraged or not, and that strong constitutions are a very, very important matter. But it's not just that strong constitutions make a difference, it's that women have to begin, and girls have to begin to understand what their constitutional rights are, because they can't aspire unless they understand. So issues of trust are very important in terms of teaching between generations, but we also came to the conclusion that the young can teach the old. We need to also address various ideologies, and in communication, these skills are very, very important. The collaborations that we want to encourage include not only education, but the thorny matter of empowerment, which some of us liked and some of us didn't like. The problem that, for example, that Wilson raised, that women are risk averse, is something that we spent some time discussing, and I think it's a generational thing more than anything else. So that if learning and risk-taking are combined, that can be overcome. It's also the fact that we discussed that women work much more than men do, in different kinds of ways perhaps, but women do a lot of work. There are informal entrepreneurs in the workforce as well as CEOs, and all of us have needs that need to be recognized. We had some discussions about family firms in the Southeast Asian context, and the competitions between younger generations versus older generations who want to continue to hold control. And we talked quite a lot about rules and traditions and the cultural aspects of family firms. That women, in some cases, do have inferiority complexes and are less willing to assert themselves, both in business and within the family setting. In terms of social change, we came to the conclusion, I believe, that inclusive change was very important and that it was a quantitative thing. And that the kind of social collateral that was needed was a very important aspect in overcoming some of the constraints that might be found both in religion and in traditional barriers to women entering and being successful in the workforce. Within the value chain solutions, obviously leadership is very important. And the point that was brought up here about down at the bottom, the very youngest children, is extremely important. As you say, when children get to be 12, it's already too late. So the early start in education is very, very important. We had some very interesting comments from some of the CEOs who joined us, who asked questions, what makes a good leader? If you feel that you're distinguished, does that mean you've arrived? Is it somebody who has followers? Is that the mark of leadership? Is it defined by the fact that you feel you have influence and that you're listened to? Is it defined by excellence? By the fact that somebody is an accomplished professional? Or is it defined by the power of the position itself? Is that the determinant? We felt that role models within the community are extremely important. That if, as you said, your own daughters, when they're playing, they still say, well, I'm not going out to work now. That's an example of a role model which is being followed. And then we had AEIOU. We had aptitude, we had effort, we had interest, we had opportunity, and we had you, the person, taking advantage of opportunities. Another of our speakers said, what constitutes leadership is if you think of others, not yourself. That's a very important part because I think in many ways it is a very, very important part of being a leader. And in that sense, they asked us to be introspective and to look for the leader within yourself and to see the kind of progress that you might make over 5 years, over 10 years. But also to teach young women, students, and to teach children that very same thing, looking ahead, forethought. a discussion about the nature and nurture argument, and whether 30% clubs were advocating a kind of elitism. Whether that was dangerous or not. But obviously women leaders in the workplace are important examples. Vanilla told us that she was a troublemaker. I don't think Vanella's a troublemaker. I think she's a conscientizer. And she said to us that moving forward sometimes means stepping back, and asked us to really examine how leadership is constituted. She talked about gender-learned behaviours, being butch or being sissy, and about identity, but also about celebrating what we want to change as feminists, as women in politics, even in changing the politics of corporations, even when resistance is met. What are norms, she asked us. Are norms normal? It's not about being a special woman so much as being part of resisting that there isn't equality for all women. It's not enough to just be super talented or hardworking, because it comes at the cost of the deficit of other women within a corporation. We had a debate about whether we should still use gender if we want to involve men and women in women's economic development, or whether we only need to think about women. And that we need to neutralize the topic a bit. Are women in leadership equal to men in leadership? If they're not, how will it come? How can it be inclusive? I think that's probably a lot of what we have discussed. I have pages and pages of notes, but these are some of the ideas that I will try to put together, and I will circulate a draft to all of you. Insofar as the speakers themselves said specific things, I will circulate the speakers themselves to make certain that they're in accord with what I record that they've said. But I hope you will all feed back to me and give me commentary, because I think Sabina has really done something extraordinary and wonderful in having this forum, and in giving us an opportunity to rethink where we are now, today, and where we can get to in the future, both in our work, but also with the younger generation. So, thank you, Sabina.
So it just falls to me to call this session to a close and the forum to a close. And I just want to say I'm really excited by a lot of things I've heard. I haven't been able to be around for a lot of it, but as Annalisa mentioned, I hope this is the start of something really exciting. I envision Project Southeast Asia and our Symposium as a platform for change, and I hope that from this we can grow something. So this is, the work starts now, and we move forward. And I want to thank Sabila again. She's done a huge amount of work. She really put this together. So thank you very much, Sabila. So
One idea did come up, PJ, and I thought I would just mention it in terms of, just very quickly, and I don't expect the answer now. So in addition to the report and putting the report together and getting the feedback was so much information over the past 2 days, and it would be just good to have a destination site. How it's done, that's another question.
Yeah, definitely. If it's all a matter of capacity, and if we can find the capacity, we would love to. I would love to do it.
Yes, volunteer.
As long as I.
You've got a website for that.
Well, I think we have people who are willing to contribute, it will be achievable. I don't see it as one person's job necessarily. I think all of us have a responsibility for having participated. We have a responsibility now to carry on with this.
So that was one key, 2 things for the next year.
Fantastic. Great. I love how you're thinking of the next year already.
Future growth horizons.
In her speech, Annalisa mentioned 117 years, and that seems like, she mentioned in a way that, oh, it's such a long time. But of course, I'm a historian, and to me that's a blink of an eye, right?
That'd be great.
But it also tells me that we have an end date, So in 100, we're definitely on the road to achieving gender equality. So we are on the right side of history, and history is working with us, for us. So all we need to do is accelerate what is already happening. So the challenge is not as big as we think it is. We just need to move history faster, right? And it took so when you mentioned culture, I mean, gender was much more equal before colonization in Southeast Asia, but because of the exploitative economy, it forced men and women into certain roles, and they changed the culture of Southeast Asia. Java, for example, Java was as rich as many European states, and so it changed in the past, and we can change it again. So I'd like to think, because of what we've done, we've gone from 117 to maybe 116.5 or something, but we're getting there, So I'm really excited. Thank you all so much for coming, and I hope you'll come to our dinner where we have Elizabeth Pisani speaking, and that will be really, really interesting. She's done a lot of work around this subject indirectly herself, of course. So I hope to see all of you at dinner, and I hope to see all of you again next year and in the future. So thank you very much for speaking.
Can I just beg everybody, if you are still here tomorrow or over the weekend, or in fact over the next week, to go along to St. Anthony's College to see the exhibition of vernacular architecture, because I think it has some important messages about the environment and what we're doing to the environment. And St. Anthony's College is just straight north up the road. It won't take you more than 5.5 minutes to walk there. And you go in through, past the Porter's Lodge, and turn left to face Zaha Hadid's last building. It was the last building that she completed before she passed away in March. And it's a very modern building that links two Victorian buildings, and the gallery is in what we call the Silver Worm, that is the link. So in this very modern space, we try to examine questions about the transmission of learning over generations, the use of available materials, and the kind of conservation that we all need to think about in terms of the environment. So I hope you